What do you think of these people that just completely write off the Northeast?
They know something you don't know.
I'm going to push back on that one a little bit.
I'm ready for pushback, dude. I'm ready for it.
Frankly, you know your shit. Pulling yourself up. Like, I've never had to do that.
I hated hiking. It sucked.
Oh, okay. It might sound a little harsh, but...
in the Adirondacks or the White Mountains or Maine, like, I have two words for those people. One starts with an F and the other ends in U.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Trail Tales. My name is Kyle O'Grady. I am a huge hiking nerd, and in every single episode of this podcast, I chat with other hiking nerds about their experiences on the trail. We're going to have a fantastic episode for you today, a repeat guest, a gentleman I've gotten to know very well, and a gentleman that I think has a lot to add to this space, and so it's going to be a good one. But before we get into it, I got to say two things. The first thing, I haven't said this in a long time, it's 5-star reviews. I have a podcast, it's legally, I have to say this stuff. Leave a 5-star review for the show on Apple or Spotify. In fact, there's actually a really good one I got that I want to read. And so it goes like this. It says 5 stars, getting progressively worse. I started listening to this podcast a few months ago. Not bad. Hiking trail advice. The podcast has become a waste of time for me. Wait, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. This is the one. It says, this podcast saved my life and restored my marriage. I was on the brink of total collapse. My wife threatened to leave me. Even my own dog wouldn't look me in the eyes anymore. But after I started listening to this podcast every day, my hair grew back. I lost 100 pounds. My wife and my dog began to respect me. And my boss hired me to replace him as the CEO of an exploding tech startup. I can now speak 5 languages and taste color. Folks, these are the kind of 5-star reviews I'm looking for. So please go leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or whatever you use to listen. I really appreciate that. Thank you to whoever left that really funny review. Second of all, if you are in the Denver, Colorado area on December 7th, Saturday, December 7th, I am doing a live podcast with Backpacker Radio. It's not a Trail Tales episode. It's a Backpacker Radio episode. We're going to be live at the Skylark Lounge. Tickets are on sale now. It's going to sell out. And so make sure you go get a ticket to that if you're going to be in Denver on Saturday, December 7th. The show starts at 4:30, or doors are at 4:30. I'll have a link to that in the description if you want to buy tickets. And they're also doing this meet and greet thing afterwards, this holiday party afterwards. So I'm going to be hanging out all night, probably drinking a little bit too much. And so it's going to be a good time. So yeah, link to that in the description. Without further ado, let's get into the episode here. I'm very excited to reintroduce even all of you to Mr. James Appleton of the 46 of 46 podcast. And James, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. I keep forgetting you were a repeat guest because it's been so long since we recorded.
Yes, sir, brother Kyle. Nice to be here. Yeah, it's great to be back. It's great to chat with you all the time. I've watched your progression in this world of podcasting and YouTubing, obviously, since like way back when. So it's super awesome to see what you're up to now and the success that you're having out there, and you're just doing your thing. It's great. Love to chat with you. Yeah,
man, I appreciate that so much, dude. It's been so long. I think I've had you on twice, maybe? Or is it just once? I can't even remember.
No, I was on your show once, and then you were on my show. So that's why we've had 2 talks, yeah.
That's
also,
right, dude.
Props on the Adirondack 46er flag behind you there. I love
that. Yeah, I love that. I got to sneak that, especially for the Kyle Hates hiking videos. I like to sneak that in the background as just a little token to, the real ones out there, the real hiking nerds. Especially now that my main channel has taken this new direction. But anyways, dude, so I mentioned 46 of 46 podcast, but the truth is that, as of late, you've been up to a lot more than just that podcast. And so why don't you give yourself a bit of a reintroduction for those that maybe didn't hear that previous episode or heard it and forgot about it because it was so long ago now. Yeah, dude, who are you? What do you do? Just talk about all that stuff for me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's like, I probably feel like it's probably been like 3 years since I was on your show last. So, like anything, like everything progresses, right? And like things start to change. You kind of evolve the same way you have, I guess I have too, in terms of like what I'm doing. But yeah, so I have the 46 of 46 podcast, which is, an outdoors and very often hiking centered podcast about the Adirondack Park, which is where I live, which is how we know each other. And, hence the me giving you the props on the Adirondack 46er flag behind you. But yeah, I just like this podcasting world has really evolved to, it was just this thing that I did. And now it's like, it controls my life in a sense. So like everything revolves that's in my life, how I put food on the table revolves around like what I've done on this podcast. So it's kind of neat since we last were on each other's shows, how things have changed. But that's pretty much where I'm at this point, just doing different things and kind of bringing to the table for people what I bring to the table, what I can do. And the majority of that has been, first with the podcast, it's like introducing people to hiking and to the outdoors and to climbing mountains and like what that entails here where I live, right in the middle of the Adirondack Park in upstate New York. If anyone's not familiar, why would anyone? Most people aren't familiar unless you're from the Northeast, but
a lot of listeners of the show definitely are. We got some Northeast hardos.
It's sure. It's an untapped secret here in America. And I have listeners from all over the country who are just like obsessed with the Adirondacks, and it's so wild to see. And I grew up here and I didn't realize until like later in life that like it is a thing that people are obsessed with. But this, people are obsessed with Vermont too. It's just like people like these areas that they don't get to visit so often. Also, speaking of Vermont and Trail Tales, shout out to Annie Erickson, who learned of me through your podcast and now is a personal friend. And I'm sure she'll be super psyched to hear her name on this podcast. Yeah. So shout out to you, Annie.
She's been a supporter of my content for a long time. So I also appreciate you very much, Annie. I see your comments and messages and stuff. All right, dude. What do you think? This is totally off the cuff, James, but what do you think of, this is something I've been harping on, I feel like a lot lately. What do you think of these people that don't live in the Northeast, maybe have never visited or never hiked here, certainly? And say, I always use the example, say someone that lives in Texas and they're like, oh, I'm going to go fly. I'm going to travel a long distance to go do a backpacking trip or something like that. What do you think of these people that just completely write off the Northeast mountains, the Adirondacks, the White Mountains, stuff like that, because they think they have to go to Colorado? I think a lot of people and again, there's a lot of listeners, most listeners of this show probably already know this, but there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that just because our mountains in the Northeast are a little bit lower in elevation doesn't mean that they're not a freaking awesome place to go backpacking. What do you think of these people, or what would you tell them? I guess would be a kinder way to phrase that.
I mean, it's obviously like going out west. The phrase "out west" is just kind of what everybody knows. So it's not really that surprising that people end up that's where they default to. Especially like your example of Texas, it's like it makes sense, but that's kind of like the sexy area that people are aware of. I do think the Northeast, in terms of the outdoors world, it really is one of those if you know sorts of scenarios. Where that's why you find, people who, in the Adirondacks or the White Mountains or Maine, like people from up there in Vermont, like they have this kind of chip on their shoulder because they know something you don't know, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's kind of like the Northeast swagger that people have, because the trails over here, they're very different than they are out west. And it's just a totally different vibe. It's a different experience. And I think that is where that comes from. But for people from anywhere else in the country, like obviously they're going to kind of default to going out west. But I also know that once people end up in the ADK, there's something that grabs their heart. Like these mountains are mysterious and they have that kind of quality to them. So I would encourage you to branch out. New York has more than just New York City. New Hampshire has mountains along the entire state. The Northeast holds its own. Let's just put it that way. The Northeast holds its own.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I've been saying this for a lot on the show, especially since I've moved away from the Northeast. I just find myself wanting to stick up for it a little bit more.
Sure. And I know even as I say that, I guarantee there's people listening to the podcast right now that are, like from the West, and they're just thinking to themselves, of course, here's another person from the Northeast having to try to pretend like we have mountains here. But it's like, again, it's just a different vibe. We have jokes. Obviously you're, you're 46, you've done a lot of time in the ADK. We have jokes about, the Western hikers, and they probably have jokes about the Northeastern hikers. You see memes on it all the time online. It's all fun and games, but it's all actually they're all kind of true, the memes that you see. But I do think that you just kind of have that, the people from the Northeast have that chip on their shoulder when it comes to their outdoor recreation possibilities up here.
Yeah, man. I just think that people that aren't from the Northeast, and I always say, it's not like the Adirondacks or the White Mountains are a secret. You know, they're not these like unknown places, like totally underrated places. But they are a little bit of a secret to people that don't live in the Northeast, I guess, or even the East Coast. We can extend it out. And I always use Texas, like someone coming from Texas as an example, because I feel like they don't, a lot of the time, and of course we're generalizing, a lot of the time, those people that fly to destinations to go backpacking don't even consider flying to the Northeast. But I'm just trying to make the point that it's worth it, folks. Trust me.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Or skiing too. You want to go skiing. Everyone kind of defaults to going out west, but it's like, guess what state in the country has the most ski mountains? New York State. You would never think Vermont is like the second most. Like there is so much skiing in the Northeast that you would never realize. But everyone kind of defaults to, you know, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, etc.
I'm going to push back on that one a little bit more. When it comes to skiing, I feel like, I mean, the skiing's great in the Northeast, but I feel like if you're going to fly, then go to Colorado. But hiking is a totally different ballgame when you're not dependent on snow conditions. All right, dude. So, you know, the last time we did, you know, both my episode and your episode together, it was so many years ago. It was before you started this Seek to Do More program, I guess.
Sure.
And the reason I want to bring this up is because the theme of this episode is 5 reasons why you suck at hiking. And so before we start going through that list, I want people to know why you're qualified to tell them why they suck at hiking, James. So talk about your programs. What is Seek to Do More? What is this Great Range Athlete Training Program? I think is the way I should phrase it. You know, I don't know a ton about this stuff other than what I've, you know, briefly seen on your socials, but I know it's really been a big hit. It sounds like from talking to you. And so, you know, what is your coaching? Like, what is this stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So Seek to Do More, it's just like, my one-on-one coaching program. So, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, and sometimes you're kind of in a rut in life. You're out of shape. Your fitness sucks. Your nutrition sucks. You're, you know, just overall, just like you're not really thriving, but you want to be. And that's also based upon, you know, where in my world, I'm like in the outdoors world in terms of my podcast. So it has become like an outdoors kind of thing, but it's kind of my coaching program that helps people become the strongest versions of themselves, both in the mountains physically, so that they can actually have the adventures they want to have instead of like feeling like death every time they go hiking or every time they get to a summit or back to a trailhead. Instead, they can do it in a strong way. But I also feel if you're going out into the mountains and not kind of learning the lessons that the mountains have for you and applying it to your actual life, like I just feel like you're missing the point. I feel like when you're out in the outdoors, you're in the mountains, you're in the backcountry, there's so much that applies to real life that you're missing the point if you're not kind of coming back a stronger version of yourself for life. So that's really like what my coaching program is. And that's what Seek to Do More is. And it has kind of exploded, honestly. And it's overwhelming and humbling and exciting all at the same time, because there's a lot of people who, you know, run around in the mountains and they don't feel as confident in there. They don't feel as strong and capable and conditioned and all that stuff, both just physically and then mentally, to like have the adventures they want. So that's kind of where it all stems from. And it's a great thing. Annie, who I mentioned before, she's one of my clients now. She heard of me on your podcast years ago. It's all exciting stuff. And then Great Range Athlete is like Seek to Do More is like the really deep version of what I do. You know, I help you become the strongest version of yourself in the mountains and in your life. Whereas Great Range Athlete is it's a much more surface level, like it's a group training program that I developed to help people build strength, help hikers build physical strength and, you know, mental toughness for the mountains so that they can go and enjoy hiking, whether it's in the Adirondacks, whether it's out west. You know, I've had people all over the state run the program. I've had people, right now in my program, I have people in California, Arizona, Ohio, Maryland, like kind of all over the country. But it's just basically people who want to get physically stronger and mentally stronger so they can actually enjoy the outdoors. They can not feel like, you know, their heart's going to beat through their chest when they're climbing a mountain. They're not going to feel like when they get to a summit that they're going to die, or, you know, because it turns out that's a real, it's a real stress for a lot of people. And I get it. I grew up in the Adirondacks. I hated hiking because I was never in the proper shape to do it. And therefore it sucks. Like it sucks when you aren't in that shape. And hiking is, especially climbing mountains, especially in the Northeast where these trails just find a drainage and they just go straight freaking up. So you need a very specific kind of level of conditioning and a level of strength, in my opinion. So because of that, and turns out that strength training in general is actually like an even bigger part of my life than outdoors and hiking that most people would think. I just kind of merged the two because these are the things I know about. So I help you here, with my podcast. Here's information about the trails. Here's information about hiking. Here's where you need to go so you can enjoy the Adirondack Park. And now I just it naturally evolved to, okay, I can help you, from my books, I can help you understand the mountains so you can have the adventure you want. And now I can also help you get in better shape so you can really enjoy the mountain. So it was a really kind of natural progression that is, very organic in how it grew. But that's really what all those things you just talked about are. Great Range Athlete is like a group training program. So people, they run it together. They do the same program. And there's like a mobile app, and you have like a team environment. So it's fun. People sending each other videos, and like, it's just a good time. And then the Seek to Do More is kind of that, but in a much bigger, much more personalized, and I'd say impactful way of helping you become like a stronger hiker and stronger person outdoors in general. And then also applying that same stuff to like your life so that you actually are the type of person you want to be. Because I think we all know about being in a rut in life and, different things, but it kind of helps sharpen your mind, sharpen your body. And it's freaking great. It's awesome seeing people make progress and like get themselves out of this rut. It's humbling, to say the least. It's humbling.
Yeah, man, it's such a good idea. I've never really seen anything quite like it in this space before. And I've also heard really good things from some of your clients as well. Some really good testimony and stuff.
Very cool.
I want to ask you maybe this would be, it might sound a little harsh, but maybe it'll be a hard question. Maybe it won't be. You've actually kind of already answered this a little bit unintendingly, but is that a word? Anyways, why are you qualified to run these programs? Why should people take your advice on this stuff seriously? Even, the results you've had aside, we'll say, make it a little bit more difficult, because you could just say, well, look at the results, and that's fair. But sure. Yeah, I guess maybe a better way to ask this would be, when you first started this program, before you had any clients, when you just had this idea, and you went to kind of put it into action, why did you feel that you were qualified to do this? Why did you think that you would be able to help people like this?
Yeah, sure. I don't honestly feel, I'm going to be honest, that never really crossed my mind. It's really just like, I've been, I had my own kind of physical transformation, over the last decade, dropping almost 100 pounds, and just from, honestly, dude, just showing up day after day after day after day, month, year after year. I just never quit. Like, everyone can picture times in their life where they were going to the gym, they were, doing the things for like a few months. Most people can't tell you when there was like a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years where they like never missed a week of going to the gym or training or focus on that. And for me, that, kind of journey basically led me to the outdoors, honestly. Like, as I told you, I grew up surrounded by these mountains, and I never gave a damn, dude, because I hated hiking. It sucked because it's this weird combination of a lot of different kind of physical expenditure. And if you're not in the shape for it, it freaking sucks. So as time went, and as I kind of started, I lost a whole bunch of weight. I kind of transformed my mind, because nobody loses a lot of weight and doesn't have like a mindset transformation too. And because of that, I was able to now go hiking, and all of a sudden I climbed a mountain. I was like, whoa, I can't believe I actually did that. And I don't want to die right now. Like, that was fine. I could go do another one, because growing up, I remember hearing like people do more than one mountain in a day. That is absolutely insane. So because of what I did with like my strength training, that's just like as big a part of my life as hiking. And honestly, like the whole kind of helping you get in better shape specifically for hiking, I mean, that came years after I started the podcast. So like I said, it was like a very organic progression. And because of what I experienced going from like fat slob, piece of shit to, oh, I can actually like hike mountains now. I can do things like the Great Range Traverse and get home and be fine. Like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I've figured out for myself how I can transform my life. And because I can transform my life, I can now help other people get out there and experience the outdoors so that they can experience the same transformation that the mountains have for people. So I kind of felt like it's like a duty of mine. Like I have to help you. And it's kind of funny. I tell my wife, like, I didn't choose this life. It chose me. Like I have this kind of feeling of responsibility to people to help you if I can. So let's take the podcast, for example. Did that for so many years. And there's so many times, you can understand, like you just decide, man, I don't really want to do this anymore. But you have all these people who like, they get their information from, they send you messages. Hey, every time I drive up to the Adirondacks, like your podcast is what puts me in like the frame of mind for coming up there. I listen to your hikes and all this stuff. And it's like, crap, I guess I have to keep doing this. So because I just kept doing it, and I applied the same principles to, losing weight, to the gym. And I applied those same principles of like, just keep showing up day after day after day to the podcast, because I feel like I have to do this thing. And I have this kind of like this duty to the mountains now. This is just the next phase of that, quite frankly. So in terms of my, like what qualifies me, it's really just like, I've been out there doing it. I took myself from being like fat slob, couldn't, had to turn around on Big Slide Mountain, which is a mountain here in the high peaks, in 2012, I want to say, I turned around trying to hike it because I couldn't do it, to fast forward now. And my next book that comes out in March is the book on how to hike the 46 high peaks. So it's like, talk about a total transformation in terms of where you're at and where life can take you, as long as you just like don't quit and you just keep going. So I kind of like took that same mentality and I've applied it to helping people get into the shape so that they can have that same experience, because it's amazing. Like the outdoors, people have this idea that, oh my God, it's too freaking crowded and there's too many people. I have two words for those people. One starts with an F and the other ends in U. The outdoors, like, everyone should be experiencing this. So when people are retreating to the outdoors, I see that as just like, that is such a benefit to people who, you're out there for a reason. So they should be too. So yeah, that's kind of, that's where I feel qualified. It's just that mixed with the fact that, I am pretty strong. I have over a 600-pound deadlift. So I am pretty strong for someone who hikes mountains. I guess you add those things together, and that's probably why I feel qualified, I guess, or that's the story behind it, I guess.
Yeah, dude, that's a great answer. I mean, your journey, and I feel like, in other podcasts I've listened to, people that have various coaching programs or give advice on just about anything. A lot of the time, most of the time, I would say, again, this is anecdotal, but it seems like the reason they started doing it was because of their own personal journey. And it sounds like you're the same way. And actually, if you don't mind, James, if we could put up some of the transformation pictures, because I've seen some of the pictures of you from years ago when you were a lot bigger, and to see that compared to now, it's like absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
And so,
one day at a time, dude. That's what it was. One day at a time, and just not quitting. That's that's ultimately where it comes from. And that's dude. It's like, I say all the time, like, the mountains have so many lessons to teach you if you listen. And if you stop and listen, and like, how do you get to the top of a mountain? You just have to keep going. Is it going to be hard? Yeah. Are you going to want to turn around? Yes. But if you keep going, you are going to get there. So that principle. It's so freaking simple. But how often do we quit? It's the second shit gets hard in life, we just want to turn around and stop. So when you kind of push yourself through that, both like mentally and physically, even just for like climbing a mountain or backpacking a trail, or in the other stuff in life that you're dealing with, the same exact principles apply. Everything you need to know about life, you'll learn right there in the mountains. So it's exciting to realize that. When you start to realize that, you can start to make like really nice changes for yourself. And that's like why I feel this is what I do. This is what I'm doing. And this is, again, I say like, this life chose me. I didn't choose it. It's just like, oh, I have all these people asking me for help in this subject. Oh, I can help you. okay, I guess I'll help you. And then it just, again, very organically evolved to what it is now. And it's exciting.
Man.
It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, dude, it's super exciting. Like I said, I've never seen anything quite like it in this space before. So I think it's a very creative idea, if anything.
Thank you.
So, dude, all right, let's get into some reasons why people suck at hiking. I think you made it pretty clear why you're qualified to talk about this stuff. I have not heard any of these points from James. I don't know what he's going to say. And so I'll kind of absorb it, and then I'll add my commentary or follow-up questions, or even challenge him on anything if I can think of anything, because, we got to keep it a little interesting around here. No promises there, because I have a feeling it's going to be pretty solid stuff. But anyways, dude, what's your first reason why people suck at hiking? What do you got?
All right. 5 reasons why you suck at hiking. Reason number 1 is a lack of trail specific strength. So the reason that I say this is because, as I kind of touched on a little bit before, like, hiking is this really weird amount of physical expenditure. Like, you need to be strong to climb mountains. And again, I'm mostly focused on like this climbing mountain thing, especially here in the Northeast. Anyone that knows, the trails just find a drainage and they go straight up. So it's like a different kind of animal than, a trail that's a nice trail that switchbacks its way up the mountain. When you're not strong, you're going to struggle no matter what you're doing. If you don't have that strength, both in your legs, your back, because you're wearing a heavy ass backpack all day, right? Like, if you don't have that sort of strength, your body's going to just crumble faster. So strength is never a weakness, to quote a guy named Mark Bell. The stronger you are, the more likely you're going to have success. The more successful you are, the more fun you'll have. And, it just is like a cycle. Get stronger, have more adventures, have better adventures, go back wanting more, as opposed to being weak and not being able to do it and being like myself, who would turn around on mountains or would get to the top of a mountain and be like, that freaking sucked. I don't ever want to do that again. And then years go by and I don't go out there. I don't do it again. And then I don't get to experience that, the joy that I get now from being out in the woods and out in the mountains. So when you get stronger, and that's what I did, you're going to have better adventures. It's just freaking plain and simple.
Not to mention it's safer too, if you're
physically
more capable of handling things, less chance of an accident, less chance of, needing to call search and rescue, injury. Exactly. Yeah. Any of those things, God forbid. So
the stronger your legs are, the stronger your muscles are, the stronger your back is, your core, etc. You're going to have a better chance of success out there, less chance of injury. And the way that I feel people will get stronger for hiking is to actually start lifting some damn weights. You're not going to get stronger. You're not going to get in better hiking shape by just going running. I know this is like this is probably taboo here in hiking land, but just running is fine. It's going to help, but by no means is it going to be like the game changer for your outdoor adventures. Building strength is going to be the game changer for your outdoor adventures. 1000%.
What, just briefly, what are some, I know you could probably do a whole podcast just on this, but what are some either muscle groups or exercises that people could start with? Maybe just like a couple, just so it doesn't get overwhelming. What are some things people can start with there?
Yeah, sure. And all of my programming that I do for clients, whether it's the Great Range Athlete teams or it's like my personal clients, they're all kind of revolving around squatting and deadlifting. A lot of people look at those as like leg exercises, when in reality, they're full body exercises. So if you wanted to do one movement for the rest of your life to keep you strong and healthy and able to have the adventures you want, just start trap bar deadlifting. Most of your gyms have a trap bar. It looks like a stop sign. That bar, trap bar deadlifting, is the number one exercise. Whether you're a 10-year-old girl or you're a 95-year-old man, everyone should do it. It's the most like functional movement. You bend over, you pick something up off the ground, and you're using every muscle that you're going to use hiking with that movement. So trap bar deadlifting, squatting. And if you think about squatting, people think it's a leg exercise, which it helps, obviously, but also the weights on your back. So talk about a full body exercise. And what also do you wear on your back when you're out backpacking? What do you wear?
A backpack.
Kyle? A freaking backpack. So you're strengthening all the muscles that matter. And then you want to keep it really simple and just do something at home. Step ups. Put on your backpack, load the shit out of it, make it super heavy, and just grab your bench, grab your dining room chair, and just do step ups. Yeah, they're super boring, but you want to get in like really good shape and train the muscle groups that are really necessary for going out hiking. Just do a couple hundred reps of step ups a day and watch how quickly both your cardiovascular capacity improves and just your general hiking strength, because you're mimicking the movement. And that's pretty much what I do with most of my training programs. Like, because as I mentioned, like this hiking, it's this, especially climbing mountains, it's this very strange combination of like, you need a little strength, you need a little, you need obviously endurance and cardiovascular capacity. You have to be able to move in this athletic manner, you climbed in the high peaks a million times, you're climbing up Allen Mountain by roots along a slab. Like, you need to be able to move like kind of like an athlete. So it's this kind of hybrid. So when we simulate that same kind of hybrid capacity output, with how you structure how the training goes each day and the movements you're doing, you can mimic the mountains really well. You just have to be very strategic about it. And when you do, now you're setting yourself up for success, because there is this idea that you can get in better shape for hiking by going hiking. And I say, yeah, 100%. But 95% of people don't live right in the mountains. So like, they don't have the mountains and that around them to go hiking, to get in shape for hiking. So they have to come up with something else to get them prepared for the trail. And those are ways. So trap bar deadlifting would be your number one. Squatting would be your number two. And then wearing your backpack and doing step ups, and you're, stepping up onto your dining room chair, I'd say would be number three in terms of like
awesome
some exercises. Yeah. But building strength, the stronger you are, the better life will be, the better your mountain adventures will be. It'll never be a bad thing. More muscle, more muscle, higher metabolism, all that stuff.
I need to work some more deadlifts into my routine. I do a lot of leg stuff, but deadlifting just scares me because I feel like my technique's not great, which is obviously something
a lot of people have that. A lot of people have that fear. And that's actually why I say like the trap bar versus like a regular barbell, in my opinion, and I compete in powerlifting, so that's another kind of sport that I do, but I don't believe unless you compete in powerlifting, I don't believe anyone needs to use the regular barbell for deadlifting. I think the trap bar is way better for like the general population, and especially for hikers. It's just like the most like mechanically sound movement. Your hands are at your side, you bend over, you grab hold of it, you stand up. Like the learning curve in terms of technique and form for a trap bar deadlift is, 60 seconds, because it's just such a natural movement where your hands are at your sides. You just grab hold of the bar, push your feet through the floor, and watch yourself stand up. It's really simple.
Cool, man. Yeah.
You should though. I want to pack on some mass on you so that you're like a giant freak out on the trail.
Hell yeah, dude.
People
I'm working out.
People see you coming down the trail and they're like, who is that muscle bound freak in front of me? That's what I want.
I'd love to get there. All right, dude. What's the second reason why people suck at hiking?
All right. Reason number 2 why you suck at hiking is because you have a poor cardiovascular endurance. And this goes back to running, right? Like, running alone is not going to get you in shape for hiking. It's going to help. Everything's going to help. But obviously you need both, right? So like, let's take what I was just talking about with building strength. If all you do is build strength and you only build this like max effort strength, like what powerlifters do, and you avoid also needing that like, longer endurance, you're still missing the point, right? So let's take, for example, anyone who's run any of my programs or used any of them, you'll find that there's 2 days a week that are called mountain strength days, which are straight up mountain days. Then there's a day that I call the steady state cardio day, which I call the approach day. We all know about these long freaking approaches to get to the mountains. It's like
Allen's a great example of that one.
Fantastic example. 8 miles just to the base of the mountain before you go straight up like 2,000 feet of gain in like 1.2 miles or something. So you still need that steady state cardio. You still need that endurance. So like if you don't have that as well, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, because ultimately, being out in the woods for 10 hours is being out in the woods for 10 hours. Like it's no matter which way you slice it, whether you're walking down the road for 10 hours or you're walking in the woods for 10 hours, it's a long day. So you need to have that cardiovascular endurance to make yourself successful out there.
Awesome, man. All right, what's reason number 3? I got nothing when it comes to that last one. I mean, no pushback.
Sure.
know anything.
I'm ready for pushback, dude.
I'm trying, dude. Like I said, no, I couldn't promise that I would because, frankly, you know your shit. Clearly.
No, I appreciate that.
Okay, what's the third reason why people suck at hiking?
Third reason is the inability to move athletically. So again,
interesting.
Climbing mountains, right? Like it requires this ability to move athletically. There's so many times where, you know, I've been out in the high peaks or just anywhere around where I'm like climbing up over boulders, or I'm grabbing roots and climbing up by roots, or I'm jumping down, you know, going, you know, in the Adirondacks, going between Giant and Rocky Peak Ridge is this like very like infamous col that you have to get to. And dude, if you can't grab your own body and pull yourself up and, you know, shimmy yourself down rocks and down ledges and grab roots and, you know, kind of like huck yourself up, like you have to move athletically. So if you're not able to do that, you're going to miss out on a lot of adventures for starters. But if you can move that way, you're way better off. So, you know, I love my mother to death, but there are a lot of times where I've been hiking in the mountains where I'm like, this is why you have to be able to move athletically, because my mother could never get up this stretch of trail. And that's what I say to myself, is she could never get up this, unfortunately. And it requires that. Yeah, obviously, like some backpacking trips, especially like long distance backpacking, maybe you don't need that athletic, you know, ability, but it's only going to behoove you if you do have it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to make sections that would otherwise be harder significantly easier. How do you build that? The ability to move athletically? I call these the elevation days. And this is what I call my training, elevation days, because these are you need these kind of skill sets when you're climbing that like steep elevation, when you're gaining that elevation. So I feel like the best way to build that is by doing body weight training, because that forces your body to move athletically. Like you have to be able to move your own body in a way that behooves you in sport, and then it will also translate to hiking. Because again, like, yeah, I get it. Hiking's not a sport. There's no ball, but like you still have to be able to handle, you're still moving your body, you're still sweating, you're still breathing heavily. So you're doing stuff that would be in, you know, kind of like sport in a sense. Hiking would be better if there was a ball. I mean, I think we can all agree with that. I think we can all get on board with that. We need a hiking ball.
So I have two unrelated things about this one. So they're not pushback, but
I want the pushback.
I know, dude. I'm trying. Actually, I guess maybe this isn't really pushback, but anyways. So the first thing I was going to say is that I think this is to kind of go back to how we started this entire episode. Like this is one of those things where if you're primarily a Western hiker, this is one of the things you might not understand about the mountains in the Northeast. You might be like pulling yourself up. Like I've never had to do that.
Yeah, and I get that. I understand that people are going to have that, not have that same experience. But
in the Adirondacks in the Northeast, and to be fair, there's still plenty of stuff in the Western U.S. where you do have to do that. But
it only behooves you to be able to do these things. Like, it's never going to be a bad thing. Yeah.
No, but if you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, you're hiking you know, in the White Mountains or the Adirondacks, obviously, you are going to have to do these things. And I've heard tons of stories about people getting injured on sections of trail where they're kind of like scrambling a little bit, you know, sections of trail where this kind of thing would come into play, you know, having these more athletic movements and abilities would certainly come into play. And also, I am definitely aware that there's hiking in the Western US where you're doing this stuff too, where you're scrambling up peaks. I guess I was thinking of it in terms of like the PCT, for instance. Like I can tell you, I've done almost the entire PCT at this point. I can't remember a single time where I ever had to hoist myself up.
Sure.
On the AT, definitely when I was doing the high peaks in the Adirondacks, 100%. Same thing with New Hampshire as well. And so that's just something to keep in mind. If you've never hiked in the Northeast, we'll say, just to keep it general.
Sure.
Believe it or not, you do have to do these things quite frequently on that type of terrain.
Very frequently.
This is definitely a really good point.
And then the second thing, I get that. You keep. I was saying, I get that pushback from people like, you know, online, and it's just like, that's cool. Just like where we are, this is what you need to be able to do. And even where you are, wherever you're hiking, you know, person on the internet giving me shit, wherever you are, it will only help you to be able to move like this and move your body in this athletic manner and be able to do these things. Like it's only going to help. So, you know, the push, I do get some pushback, and I have some people I told you in my program right now from Arizona and from California. And, their hiking out there has dramatically improved because they've been implementing these things that I'm talking about in their own training, because they're like a part of the Great Range Athlete team. So it only helps, even if you don't necessarily need to pull yourself up by roots. And if that root breaks, you're falling down the ledge and you're going to be in a world of hurt. It's only going to help you. It's only going to help. But sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, no, you're good. The other thing I was going to say, and this is more to everything we're talking about, not necessarily to your last point. This is very different stuff than has really been talked about on the show. Very different than when I talk about, I've said before, I think people should train before through hikes and stuff and go to the gym and stuff. But like, it's never been like, we've never done a deep dive on it on this show before like this. And to be honest with you, James, I don't really hear anyone else doing a deep dive on this stuff. It's not a common talking point for people that give advice about hiking and backpacking and these things. It's not a common talking point for people to, suggest you deadlift or go to the gym. Right. And maybe they'll throw that out generally like I have before, but to like really go in on it like this is not very common. And so I appreciate you doing this. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have really never put much thought into this stuff before. They just assume the best way to get better at hiking is just to go hiking, which again, as you mentioned earlier, obviously that is going to help, but it's not the only thing. And so I think this is awesome stuff, dude.
You can just shorten the learning curve when you do this stuff before you hit the trail. People talk about, what is isn't the Appalachian Trail like failure rate for the first 30 miles, like 60% or something like that? Like, dude, that's enormous. Imagine how much lower that would be if people were preparing themselves physically. Like I talk all the time about your physical fitness and your physical preparedness and readiness is more important than the gear in your backpack. Because if you can't get your ass to where you're trying to go, what's in your backpack doesn't matter. It's not going to matter. So people should put the same emphasis and the same energy on your physical readiness as you do on, your ultralight backpacking gear. And yes, I get it. Backpacking gear is simple. It's easy. It's sexy. Gear is fun. Training is hard. You're sweating. It's uncomfortable. But like, guess what? The mountains they're hard and sweaty and uncomfortable too. So like, you're also going to build that mental toughness, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But you know what I'm saying? Like if you actually put the same emphasis on your physical preparedness versus just your gear and your map and your route, I'm willing to bet that we'll even talk about the Appalachian Trail, that failure rate would be significantly less. Maybe they make it to 60 miles instead of 30 or whatever it is.
Nobody really knows what the true failure rate is.
I know it's like that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's just an estimate, but tons of people drop out at Neal's Gap, like around mile 30 on the AT. Tons of people drop out there. A lot of people don't even make it that far.
And I'm willing to bet most of those people have some pretty fancy gear in their backpack.
A lot of them, especially nowadays. There are other people too that just have no idea. And I'm not trying to be a jerk to these people because I was there too, frankly. But a lot of it is a lot of people that just don't have anywhere close to the right gear. Also, a lot of those people aren't physically prepared either. And then there's definitely people that, spend a ton of time researching the gear and doing all this stuff and have all the latest and greatest, the lightest, all this stuff, but then, didn't put as much time into the physical preparation or the mental stuff, like you said, we'll get into.
Yeah.
And then that's why they drop out as well. So, it's all that stuff. And I think everything we're talking about in this episode, frankly, is very, very useful for them.
Yeah.
So
and what you don't know, you don't know. And I get it, but it's just like, I feel like when it comes to any sort of activity that involves your body moving, that we all kind of know we should probably be pretty physically fit to do anything that involves walking for long distances. But, I've been there. I've been the guy that had to turn around, as I said. So I know it. I know it all too well. And I can also tell, like, when you change that, all of a sudden your adventures become so much more fulfilling and enjoyable. And it's a really nice feeling, quite frankly, when you can get back from a 20-mile day in the high peaks and say, like, I could go do something else. Like, what a freaking crazy thought that is. Given like when I think about myself, like growing up, where I came from in terms of like wanting to die every time I would get roped in to go climb a mountain. Dude, we even in Lake Placid, dude, which is like right in the heart of the Adirondack Mountains, we even did a school field trip climbing Pitch Off Mountain one time. Like that's like how ingrained mountain culture is like in my life. And man, did I always want to die. So coming from that versus like now and seeing other people come back from their hikes and be like, holy, like people who I work with coming back saying, holy crap, I just kept going. I just got to the top and I felt fine. I said, yeah, a little bit of intentionality. Look what it does. And your adventures are so much more enjoyable. But yeah, that's point number 3 though, for sure. The ability to move athletically.
So what's the 4th reason why people suck at hiking then?
The 4th reason why you suck at hiking is because you have a poor nutritional strategy when you are out in the mountains. So as we know, the typical backpacker is, kind of like a skinny person, very little muscle mass. And the reason being is because I get it. When you're out hiking, you're out backpacking, like you're going to lose a lot of muscle mass because you're eating these trail foods that most people eat that are not going to support muscle. So I think that's part of the nutritional problem that I have, is that you're not eating enough protein out on the trail. And shout out to Julie Jester from the Jester Section Hiker podcast.
I met her very briefly at AT Trail Days, actually.
Awesome.
Just a quick, walked by each other, said hi or whatever. But yeah,
awesome.
She
She
awesome.
Is unbelievable. Huge shout out to her. She is sectioned the AT now. I think she has like 50 more miles to do the whole thing twice.
Wow.
Yeah, unbelievable. Amazing lady. Her podcast, Jester Section Hiker podcast, check it out, especially for all you Appalachian Trail people. She was one of my clients. She ran through my program and added this protein thing to her trail food while she was out backpacking all summer, and her performance just skyrocketed through the roof. You need protein, especially on long distance hiking. Like you need a lot of protein. So, and I understand protein's hard to come by, but it's also
so hard, dude.
But it's also not.
Okay.
You can make good choices.
Maybe this is where I'll get some pushback. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm ready, baby. I'm ready. You can make good choices out there, and what you put in your backpack, like you are in control over the food you get at the gas station to put in your backpack. Like you're in control of that, and you have things like you got beef jerky, you got protein bars. There are things that you can do to go in your backpack for days at a time, for weeks at a time. But the poor nutritional strategy is just like this overall thing. So you do these long days on the backpacking trail. At the end of the day, your body needs to recover, right? So how does your body recover? It recovers by rebuilding the muscles that you broke down that day. Protein is what rebuilds your muscles so that you're ready to go tomorrow. So the more protein that you can implement, whether it's like bags of chicken, which I've taken on the Northville Placid Trail very successfully, things like that are super easy to bring and like huge high impact in terms of your recoveries at the end of the day. And then on top of that, like the nutritional strategy I'm talking about is like, all right, so you want fast acting carbs for like energy now. You want, maybe slower acting carbs for energy later, and fats help with that. They digest slower, so later you'll have more energy. Whereas like that sugary stuff and white bread, that's the stuff that's going to give you the energy like right freaking now. High glycemic index, so it digests quickly and it gets right into your bloodstream and right into your world, so you're rocking and rolling. Your sugary stuff, right? And then the protein is like going to help your performance throughout the day for the long day you're on the trail. So when you have all of those things firing on all cylinders, along with water and electrolytes and salt, like obviously we all understand that. And if you don't, now electrolytes, water, and salt. When you have that whole kind of like thing firing, because think about it, like, are your boots your fuel? No, your food is your fuel. So again, we put so much emphasis on like that shit that's in our backpack, where we miss the kind of stuff that's right in front of our face. Food, your fuel is what's going to get you from point A to point B. Your legs are what are going to get you from point A to point B. So when we put more emphasis and more strategy into that, your performance goes through the roof. And, Julie is just one example. She was on the trail all summer, and enormous impact in terms of like focusing on, okay, no, I need to make protein a priority when I'm out there. In a perfect scenario, you're eating 1 gram of protein per pound of your body weight. Obviously on the trail, that's sometimes difficult to handle, to do, but make the best choices you can. Like, you're at the gas station. Yeah, you could get the Snickers bar. You could get the Little Debbie cakes, but you could also get a couple bags of beef jerky. And I'm willing to bet at the end of the day, it's going to help your body recover a little better. Or the chicken in the bags at the grocery store. Or when you come to a town when you're backpacking, you just hammer some steak or rotisserie chicken or whatever it may be. But
yeah,
I'm telling you, it's going to be a very beneficial thing for your long-term performance. And then guess what? Your body's not going to eat itself as much as it's going to. Your body atrophies when you're not giving it proper protein. That's why you see people go on these long-distance backpacking trips and they're like, hey, I lost 30 pounds on that trip. Can you believe it? And you just look at them, you're like, yeah, you lost like all of your upper body muscle, like completely.
Yeah, man.
Your body
it's happened to me
itself.
both times I did a long through hike. Yeah.
And, so protein becomes so important because protein, it builds muscle and it maintains muscle. When you're out backpacking, you're typically going to be in a caloric deficit because you're working so hard all freaking day. So if you're in a caloric deficit and you're not also eating the proper amount of protein, your body's naturally going to eat muscle before it eats fat. And when I say eat, I mean burn. But It's going to burn muscle before fat because your body's like, well, I don't need to hang on to this muscle. I'm not using it, but I need the fat because I got to survive winter. That's how your body works. That's how your body that's just your science for you. You're just functioning properly. So the way that you tell your body to maintain the muscle mass is by doing work that putting your body through trauma, which like lifting weights is telling your body, oh shoot, I guess I need to hang on to these shoulder muscles because, they're being used. Great. And you eat a good amount, a high protein diet. And now all of a sudden your body's going to say, no, I'm going to keep the muscle mass. I'm going to get rid of the body fat. Because my muscle mass needs to stay because I'm working, I'm using it. And obviously backpacking, you're not using them very often. So you're probably not going to be like grabbing some boulder and doing some, shoulder presses when you're out there, although you could. But eating the proper protein and having that nutritional strategy in place is going to drastically improve your performance, whether you're day hiking or you're on a long distance backpacking trip. Make the best decisions you can. It's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, man. I don't really have any pushback. The only thing I'll say, and this is something I've struggled with a lot on my long through hikes, is getting enough protein, even to the point where I'll find myself craving like steak or meat or something. Like I can just tell that my body is like craving protein, and I always know that I need to get more. It's just, especially on longer hikes, it's not even, it's harder to come by, and I just find myself like, I just don't like beef jerky that much, frankly.
Sure.
And when you're in the supermarket making those choices on your next resupply, I just find myself caving and buying the more sugary, tastier, frankly, foods over the more protein dense foods, just because they taste better. And so that's something I think you're absolutely right that you need to get that protein. I think it's just a little bit more difficult than it sounds sometimes,
Yeah. And I get like getting the protein is definitely harder. And it's just like anything. It takes intentionality and just saying, okay, I'm going to make the choice. Obviously this might be great. I want this, but this will make me perform better. So you kind of just have to determine for yourself, like where you're going to fall in that line. If you're trying to perform at your highest, I know it's harder because obviously those sweet Little Debbie things are going to be so much more enjoyable. But from a performance standpoint, if you do implement this, or even like maybe implement like 50% more of it, I have zero doubts you will find a huge uptick in the performance that you have out there on the trail.
I guess at the end of the day, it just, and you're absolutely right. I guess at the end of the day, it kind of just takes a little more discipline when you're in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the kind of thing too, because when I went into my PCT through hike in 22, I went in with this intention of eating healthier. That's kind of more how I framed it. Maybe I wasn't framing it as much as like protein specific, but I went in with this intention to just eat healthier, eat cleaner, we'll say. And it very quickly went to the wayside. And so I think maybe at the end of the day, it just takes a little more discipline when you're in the supermarket, when you're resupplying. And maybe it's the kind of thing too, where once you do it and you start to see those results, it will get a little bit easier because you know you're making the right choice and you're seeing those results like I just said there. So
100%.
I don't know.
And going with that too, is we mentioned Julie Gayhart, Jester, Section Hiker podcast earlier. If you listen to her 10 episode series she called the Jester Redemption Section Hike, the episodes on her podcast, she talks all about how like her performance has drastically improved during this like 10-day hike that she did, because of the protein uptick. And it's just going to make your body perform better. Again, it's like, obviously everyone's got to make their own decision for yourself, but if you're looking solely at like the best decision given the circumstances, and you show that little bit of discipline where it's like, yeah, I get it, you might not want this, but it will help you. It will help you 1000%. Whether you want to or not, or you want to just like eat the other stuff, cool. Do whatever you want. It's not going to change how your performance will be if you kind of come over here, even just for a little bit, even just a little while,
Yeah, man, it makes total sense. Definitely something I'm going to keep in mind. It's that thing I always knew kind of in the back of my head, but I never really was as intentional, which is weird because in my normal life, I am quite intentional about eating a lot of protein. So, anyways,
calories on the trail don't count. I say that on my podcast all the time. If I'm doing a long day on the trail, like I'm going to hammer food when I get back, when I get to a gas station.
That's my favorite part.
We hike for the food. That's what we're doing. But for long distance backpacking, it obviously requires much more intentionality from a purely performance standpoint. And even a day hike, like you fuel properly before you get out there, and you do have some protein throughout the day. Yeah, you'll perform better. Your body will hold up better to the terrain around it. There's no doubt about it.
What is the fifth reason why people suck at hiking?
The fifth reason why people suck at hiking is because of a lack of mental toughness.
There it is.
Hiking's hard, like you're voluntarily putting yourself into difficult terrain, difficult circumstances, weather, while also breathing heavily and huffing and puffing and being dirty, sleeping on the ground, being like in the middle of the backcountry when you're looking around and you're like, what am I doing here? Then the rain comes and you're like, no one is making me be out here. It is something that requires a high level of mental toughness because once again, no one's making you be there. So when you have that mental toughness and that grit, dare I say grit, write it down, people, you're going to have better adventures outside. You're just going to. When you become that type of person that is able to kick it up a notch when like shit goes wrong or like it sucks. And you can kind of level yourself up mentally to that next level to keep going. It's the same principle that you'll need in the gym when all of a sudden like progress stops or like you don't feel like showing up that day. Like it's the same principle. You just have to have that grit and that determination, that mental toughness to keep going when it gets hard. And when you do, you're going to find yourself in having much better adventures, much more enjoyable trips. Anytime you go outdoors, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. So how do you get that grit then? How do you improve that mental toughness?
You voluntarily put yourself in hard situations when you don't quit, or when you're out there and you're realizing you're like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to be done. I'm going to turn around. You stop in those moments and you say, am I just kind of being a bitch? Or is there something wrong that I need to turn around about? And I'm telling you, when you start focusing on like actually asking yourself these questions, you can level yourself up really quickly. And then you do it once. Oh, the next time you need to do it. Oh, I'll be able to, I didn't quit last time. That was good. Oh, I could do it again. And then you do it again. And you just leveled up another notch. And then the next time, the third time you need to do it. Oh, I've done it the last couple of times. I can do it again. And time after time after time, you start to build that mental toughness within yourself so that you can actually keep yourself and push yourself further and further. And each time that you have to make those choices, it becomes just a little bit easier because you have those wins stacking on themselves, right? Like you've done it before. Obviously, the first time's the hardest. The second time, a little easier. The third, a little easier. And eventually it becomes just muscle memory. You're like, no, I'm not going to quit. I got this. I'm going to keep going. And when you get to that moment or that like level, if you don't think that mental toughness that you're experiencing, like we'll just say like, or built in the backcountry isn't going to also snowball and affect how you respond to problems and challenges and just like everyday life, you're wrong and you're missing the point. Like, it is going to infiltrate how you think, period, in every other aspect of your life. So when you build that mental toughness, it's not like, oh, I'm super mentally tough when I'm out in the backcountry, but I'm like a bitch in my regular life. Like, it's not going to be that way. You're going to have that same mental toughness out here, and it's going to still impact what you do in your everyday life in an enormous way. So when you have that mental toughness, just kind of like on lock, yeah, your adventures are going to also skyrocket. 100%.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. Well said. The mental side of things is something that I've talked about quite a bit, usually in the context of through hiking, but obviously it applies to even just a day hike. And so super awesome, dude. I'm sure we could do a whole podcast just on that. And maybe we should sometime. Maybe I'll have to have you back on when we can kind of dive into that stuff, because it's a little bit deeper, because I absolutely love that. And I think it's frankly so beneficial. Dude, we're getting towards the end here. I really appreciate you coming up with those 5 points. I think there's so much good stuff there. This is unlike any episode that I've ever done before. This is really cool. Nice. But we're not at the end yet, because James, as you maybe recall, because it was so long ago when we did our first Trail Tales episode together, as you maybe recall, but probably don't, at the end of these episodes, I have my guests share a story, any story from their time on the trail. I try to remind my guests, in advance about this, because sometimes it can be tough to come up with a story on the fly. I failed to do that with you, so I apologize. I like to own up to it when I forget, frankly. Why do I keep saying frankly in this episode? We're going to cut that one out of my vocabulary, which is frankly, it's probably not going to happen. But anyways.
Frankly, I love it, actually.
Okay, good. Well, so stupid. Yeah, so I didn't remind James about this until right before we started. And so if his story sucks, I'll take the blame. I have a feeling it's still going to be pretty good, though. Do you have anything for us?
I'll tell a story. So the last time I was on this episode or this podcast, I remember telling a story of how I added 2 mountains last minute, and it turned my
I can't believe you even remember the story you told. Yeah. That's incredible.
I've told it a few times. I added this hike I added a couple mountains to the day spontaneously, and it turned maybe an 8-hour hike into a 19-hour hike. So it was a bad call. But no, I'm actually going to tell the story, kind of a story that is kind of going along the subject matter of what we're talking about. So
sure.
I'm also a guide. I have a guiding business, and so I take a lot of people up into the mountains, right? And what I have found, and this is going to be more of it's just a general kind of story, not a specific, let me tell you about this one time I hiked X. What I have found is when you go out with people into the mountains and you're bringing people who are a little nervous into the mountains, and you encourage them, you give them the extra kind of drive and push that they need, and you help them kind of have that reassurance. It's honestly amazing what people are actually finally capable of doing. I cannot tell you how many times, whether it's guiding clients of mine that I actually work with from a training standpoint, or hearing from clients out there, or just guide clients up in the mountains. It's very consistent how when you go with somebody who maybe is slightly better than you, quote unquote, better at hiking than you, or a little stronger, a little more seasoned, and you give them the opportunity to level up to where you're at, I'm telling you, 99.9% of the time, people level up. So what I want to encourage anyone else to do is, if you feel that you're not capable of doing the things you want to do, having the adventures you want to have, go with somebody who is a little better than you. And if you are a hiker who's hikes at a very high level, ask somebody who might be a little intimidated to go hiking to come with you, because what's going to happen is they're going to get on top of that mountain and be so freaking proud of themselves for what they did. And when you can be the person that is proud of what you did because you did something that you wouldn't have done by yourself, or you helped someone kind of level up a notch to a level that they wouldn't have done otherwise, it's super satisfying and it's awesome. And that's kind of that's what we need more of in the outdoors. We need more of people helping usher other people to enjoy the time out there because we enjoy it. And I think I have found that just like, dude, time and time again with every guide client, like, I get clients often who book me and they'll say like, I was a little nervous about hiking with you because I know like you can move really fast and this and that. It's like, and I told myself like, no, we're going to keep up with James. We're going to do it. And I typically go at like their pace, but I also will like challenge them a little bit, because when you challenge them and like put them just a little bit outside their comfort zone, not far, but just a little bit, you allow them the opportunity to stretch a little bit, and they always end up growing, and they end up getting a little bit better. And then they get to the summit and they're like, I'm so proud of what I was able to just do. And it's super satisfying and super awesome to see. But we also don't, we don't experience growth until we push ourselves just a little bit outside of our threshold. So that's kind of my story. And it's not really like a single story, but it's a story that I see freaking constantly. So it's more of like an encouragement for the listeners to, go hiking with someone who might be a little bit more experienced than you and like help yourself level up that way. Or if you're that experienced hiker, invite someone to come with you and help them level up. I think everyone will win from that. Yeah, man. Oh, dude, what a inspiring episode. I appreciate you doing this so much, man. And I'd encourage anyone who, felt a little fired up from this episode to check out James's programs and check out his podcast as well. And so where can people find you, James? Where, what's the website, the socials, all that stuff? Sure. Well, I appreciate coming back on, and you asked me to come back on the show. It's been awesome. You can find me on social media. My Instagram page is at 46 of 46 podcast, or my personal is at James Appleton 46. You can find Seek to Do More at Seek to Do More on social media, Instagram, Facebook, all those things. My website is seektodomore.com or 46outdoors.com. Those are all the spots that I find myself hanging out at. But yeah, if you guys want to get, if you're struggling like to actually have the adventures that you want, or like to feel confident and, in your physical fitness when you're out there in the mountains, that can change. You just got to start doing the right thing. So if you want some questions or some direction, this podcast that we just did will give you tons, but you can also reach out to me. Happy to steer you in the right direction. Yeah, man. And just for everybody listening and watching, I've had the privilege of getting to know James over the last few years. We met in person for the first time over the summer, right after I sprained my ankle. And he's just a solid dude. And I think what he's doing is so cool. And so, yeah, dude, I appreciate you coming on here, James. Everyone go check it out. And that's going to do it for this one, folks. Once again, December 7th, if you're in the Denver, Colorado area, Skylark Lounge, Backpacker Radio Live. I'll be there. I'll be debuting a brand new trail mystery too. That's something they wanted me to do, although the bulk of the episode isn't going to be mystery stuff. It's going to be their typical hiking BSing. So go check that out. And that's going to do it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And I will see you in the next episode. Woo!